Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is an informal conversation hosted by the World Federation of Science Journalists, together with the Norwegian Academy of Science and Letters. We are deeply honored to have a chance to meet the two Abel Prize laureates today, Professor Laszlo Lovas of Eötvös Loránd University in Budapest, Hungary, and Professor Avi Wigderson of the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, USA. Thanks to them, discrete mathematics and theoretical computer science are now established as central areas of modern mathematics. Congratulations on winning this award, and welcome.
Thank you.
And I know that there's someone else who would like to congratulate both of you, the chairperson of the Abel Committee, Professor Hans Muntekas. Professor, if you'd like to say a couple of words.
Hello. I will be very happy to congratulate Laszlo Lovas and Avi Wigderson on behalf of the Abel Prize Committee. This year, the committee has consisted of Claire Voisin, Sylvia Sarfati, Alex Lubotsky, and Subhash Kott. And the purpose of the prize this year is to celebrate the immensely fruitful interactions between computer science and mathematics. And I think we, in our citation, emphasize that this is a two-way interaction that is influencing both directions. And I think that this prize is a very important prize because I think for mathematical sciences that this focus on algorithms and computational issues is something that is really revolutionizing all areas of mathematics and is also bringing together. I mean, in the last century, mathematics was diverging a lot in pure and applied mathematics, but I think this emphasis on computations and algorithms and this kind of structures is really bringing mathematical sciences together again. So it's a really important development for mathematics and even for science in general. I think in Lovas's in Avi Wigderson's book, he's writing about P versus NP as a principle of nature and so on. So it's a far-reaching consequences. I think I stop at this point and congratulate the two laureates again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we start, I just want to say that we have a chat box and everyone here can ask questions. I'll start with a simple question for both our laureates. Why do you love math and what does math mean to you?
You'll have to tell us who to go first. I can tell you from experience, Hungarians are extremely polite and they always let you go first. So don't tell us.
Okay. Avi, would you like to go first?
Sure.
Why do you love math?
Well, I'm sure that I have some natural attraction to it. This has to be basic. I love math because it has truth, it has beauty, it has mystery, it has surprises, and it's both a meditative way of life, but on the other hand, it's a very social way of life. You can do it by yourself, you can do it with others, and mainly because there are wonderful other people to do it with.
That's a great answer. Professor Lovas, why do you love math?
It is a world where you have beauty and harmony without all the slings and arrows of the real world. I served for 6 years as the president of the academy, and some of those were very difficult periods. But I was teaching a course, and I still sort of remember that whenever I entered the classroom and closed the door, I all of a sudden was in a different world, and it was nice and beautiful and relaxing. And similarly, on the weekends, I tried to do some research or write up some stuff that I wanted to for some time. that also had this kind of calming effect on me. All the difficult bureaucratic and political and other problems, I was able to close out.
Speaking of difficult times, I know that both your lives played out in certain geopolitical and economic times that shaped your decisions. Professor Lovas, you lived behind the Iron Curtain, while Avi, you spent your childhood in Haifa. How has this influenced your lives and your decisions, Professor Lovas?
Hungary was not really the worst country behind the Iron Curtain. It was probably the most liberal, which meant that we did have connections with the West and access to conferences, even travel 1 or 2 times a year. In addition, when I was very young, it had the advantage for me that my older colleagues who were already well-established mathematicians, they were not occupied by traveling abroad or doing long travels, so they had much more time to talk to or to teach young people, and that was a benefit for me.
How about you, Avi? How was your childhood in Haifa?
Well, it was wonderful. I grew up, 2 minutes walk from the beach. So I spent, half my life on the beach and the rest playing soccer. Except that my dad kept intriguing me with mathematics puzzles. So that captivated me, and I spent lots of hours on that as well. So that's more or less the story of my childhood. My parents were both Holocaust survivors. They never talked much about this, but I think we all, I have 2 brothers, we all were always encouraged to do what we loved and pursue the passions we had. My brother was very much inclined to nature and kept bringing, cockroaches from the field and worms and put them in the fridge. And my youngest was the only one who listened to my dad when he talked about his engineering problems at work, and taught him how to fix everything. Well, me and May were never interested in that. So I think, we try to implement it with our kids also. It's just we were let free to explore what we really loved and invest time in what we loved.
Sounds like a fantastic childhood. I know that the 2 of you have known each other for many, many decades. And Professor Lovas, you said during an interview, actually with Avi, that you were lucky to start your career in a time when mathematics developed together with its applications. Why was that interesting and helpful?
In fact, I said that it was a special time when mathematics, the part of mathematics that we were doing in Hungary, discrete mathematics, which was through the mentorship of Paul Erdős, but also many other outstanding mathematicians. It was an area which was quite very, very strong in Hungary, but this area was a little bit outside the mainstream of mathematics. It was often the motivation for particular results were puzzles or kind of math Olympiad problems and the like. And then all of a sudden in the late 60s, early 70s, it turned out that there is this whole new area of computer science where discrete mathematics is the part of mathematics which is the really important there, which is the mathematical foundation of the theory of computing. And so many of us got very enthusiastic, and I said a few times that I consider this sort of analogous to the 18th, 19th century, where the analysis, differential and integral calculus developed hand in hand with physics. So the most important players were both mathematicians and physicists. Don't know whether Euler is a mathematician or a physicist, or Newton.
Inglés. No entero.
And so this was such a period, and I had a little bit this feeling about the theory of computing and discrete mathematics in the 60s, 70s, 80s.
I have one question for you, one more question, because we all worry that the very secure passwords that we're using today, as well as our encrypted conversations that are stored today, could be easily broken in the future by a quantum computer. Yet the math that you created can be used to guarantee the security of new cryptographic systems that could withstand attacks, even by quantum computers. Could you explain this a little bit? Could you explain it, how it works, maybe for non-mathematicians?
To be honest, I am. That's not my area. Probably Avi can explain this much better. But the basic idea is that for communication over a not completely secure channel, you have to encode the information you're sending, and then you have to encode it in such a way that, at least without a key, the decoding should be difficult. And it's this kind of situation that you do a computation in one way, it's easy, but to reverse it is difficult. That's what is behind these systems. And of course, it's the theory of computing has these big unsolved problems like P equals NP, which are exactly about claiming, and we would like to have a proof that these functions are really behave like that. Now, some of them, we know that against traditional computers, they probably behave like that. It's very difficult to prove that they behave like that, but that quantum computers can break them. I wouldn't be too worried at the moment, because quantum computers are not yet really functional in this sense. And even then, even if these can be broken either by quantum computers or traditional computers, as long as there is a gap between the difficulty going one way and the other, there can always be some kind of race about with making it. It's like an arm race. So one of the things that apparently is secure against quantum computers, I think that only means that nobody has found a way of using even a theoretically existing quantum computer to break it, is indeed based on what's called the shortest lattice vector problem. And that is somewhat connected to this LLL algorithm that is mentioned in the report of the committee.
What are your thoughts on this, Avi? Do you agree with this race of trying to encrypt and to break encryption?
Yeah, I mean, it's been going on, since ancient times. This people always try to. People always had secrets and try to keep them, share them with the people they wanted to, and prevent others from understanding them. People constructed the codes, since the time of Caesar or even earlier. There are the famous stories about the Enigma machine in World War. This race of privacy and secrecy between people who develop security systems and people who try to break them is always continuing. I think what's important is that since computational complexity came to the scene, this is it became a mathematical algorithmic problem, both the design of secure systems and the ability to argue specifically, rigorously about their security. There are, we can prove theorems about these, these claims that we can relate the security of a system to a difficulty or easiness of a concrete mathematical problem, like factoring integers or finding in the way of Lazzi, finding a short vector in a lattice. So it's extremely important that people understand that today and in the future, whatever their secrecy and privacy is based on is about the ability or inability to find fast algorithms for concrete problems that are underlying these security systems.
One of your favorite achievements is the concept of zero-knowledge proof, which means that you can prove something to us without revealing any of the details. How does this work? Maybe you could explain it a little bit for non-mathematicians.
Yeah, so first let me say, it's not that I can prove something to you without revealing the details. I can prove anything to you, anything. Everything I know. If I have some conviction and information to support it, I can convince you of it and not give you any shred of this information. It's a very paradoxical notion because most people can't imagine that you can convince anyone of anything without giving information. I should say that one way to find the answer to your question is to look at the prize announcement, where Alex Bellows have done a wonderful 5-minute explanation of basically our original proof with Goldreich and Micali. Let me say that a key element is cryptography. So whatever I want to prove to you is broken into pieces. And one has to remember that a proof is something that's easy to verify, something local that anybody can check easily. So if I had a proof, at least if I wrote it down, it would be very easy for you to go step by step and see that one follows from the other, mechanically, in fact. And so the idea is to break these pieces of the proof and put each one of them in an envelope, okay? So that when you want to check me to see if the proof is correct and there is no error, what I'm trying to convince you of, you can ask me to open some of these envelopes and see that at least, in some small step, I didn't cheat you. So maybe you pick them randomly. Okay, so that's one important ingredient. The second is, of course, maybe I cheated you, maybe it's 100 pages long and you asked me to look at, page 47 and, line 3 and okay, the error is not there, but it's somewhere else. So the second idea is to repeat this process. And if you repeat it just like, without changing anything, then of course you will eventually open all the envelopes and know everything. So another key, really fundamental property of what we do is that after you've opened, these few envelopes and checked locally that there is no error there, I completely throw all the envelopes and make new ones. And there's an ability which I cannot explain to make it so that if I have one proof, I have a number of proofs, and I choose one of them randomly, which makes whatever you open, if the proof is correct, whatever you open look like random bits, like something you could have tossed yourself. So therefore, because you could have done it yourself, you don't learn anything. And the last point is that if I didn't have a proof, if I was trying to cheat you, there must be an error somewhere. After a few trials, you'll find it.
This idea, I think, also has applications in blockchain technology. And I was wondering, how do you feel about this? And whether you're interested in Bitcoin, Dogecoin, or cryptocurrency in general?
Yeah, how do I feel about it? You probably mean in how do I feel about any mathematical result or any piece of knowledge that scientists or mathematicians arrive at being used by society. I think that, generally I feel great about it. I think knowledge is very important for society. Many people use knowledge. People, companies, governments, everybody use knowledge, and mostly I think it's being used for good purposes. Sometimes it's used for bad purposes, but there is no avoidance of acquiring knowledge and propagating it. So I feel good about discoveries in general, any intellectual discoveries. I am personally not interested very much in digital currencies or in general in practical applications. I'm aware of them. I think my field has benefited greatly from the practical world because it suggests models to study, computing systems, natural systems, suggest models to study mathematically and understand their power, limitations, properties, and so on. And yeah, I'm interested on the mathematical side, the problems it generates.
Thank you. Professor Lovas, maybe you could tell us a little bit the story of the LLL algorithm. How was it born?
Well, that's an interesting story because it sort of shows the quite sometimes winding way in which you arrive at a particular result. So I was working with my friends and collaborators, Martin Grötzschel and Lex Schreiber. We are writing a book on the ellipsoid method, which was a famous new algorithm at that time. And in one of the theorems, we had to make a kind of simple but a little bit awkward or out of place condition. Certain parameters had to be rational with a bounded number of a bounded denominator and numerator, and this kind of condition could always be achieved in some way. You could get around this condition, but you wanted to get the simplest possible statement of the result, and so at the time I was thinking about it alone. I realized that this can be reduced to a classical problem in number theory, which was not solved algorithmically at that time, but I could find an algorithm to solve it. And so this way I got this algorithm, and I wrote to Henrik Lenstra, where I knew that he was working on similar problems, asking him if he thinks that this is an interesting or useful result. And then he and his brother Ian wrote back quite enthusiastically that if this is the case, then they can solve a sort of basic algorithmic problem in algebra, namely factoring polynomials into irreducible factors, rational coefficients. And so we published this paper this way. And then Lagarius and Ludlisco discovered a year or two later that this algorithm can be used to break one of the proposed coding systems, knapsack codes. And so this is how the algorithm sort of moved over into cryptography. I have not followed it there actually, but this is an interesting story because it shows that knowledge is not necessarily found or generated where it is most needed. Sometimes the intellectual challenge to do something is also very important.
Speaking of challenges, I read in the New York Times that one of the first people you wanted to call after you learned that you got the prize was your wife, Katalin, who's also an elite mathematician. And you've worked together so much and you've published papers together, while most of us can barely manage a simple marriage. How is working with her different than any other collaborations you've had? Does it lead to interesting conversations?
Well, we have been together since high school. And of course, we know each other very well. And mathematically as well, we do have a number of joint papers. That's not the only sort of help that we give each other. We are both very sort of devoted to teaching mathematics. And she has now retired, but while she was teaching, we often, almost all the time, we discussed how to teach that, what to use, how to make this better presentation of the material. Then we also wrote some papers, several papers together. And of course, over the period when I was, as I mentioned, these sort of hard years as president of the Hungarian Academy, then I had a sort of a free advisor where I could discuss the issues with. So it was very important for me.
I'd like to go to Avi now. You're based in the US right now.
Yes.
You're obviously an elite mathematician, but do you do your own taxes?
Taxes.
Or you have someone helping you with that?
Yeah, we have. Edna, my wife, is handling the taxes. But we have we just collect the papers and give it to a tax person. I guess Edna is a far more practical person in the house as compared to me. So, I'd say most practical matters she takes care of. She's also a mathematician by training. Then she moved to computer science, the real computer science part. She's a programmer and a systems person, and also works at the Institute for Advanced Study at the computing group.
You're interested in so many things that are at the intersection of math and computer science, Avi. I was wondering, maybe you could tell us a little bit about how the field evolved since you started tackling these problems.
I think that, like Latsi said, I feel lucky to have been born when I was born, because the field was really young when I was born in the 50s, and by the time I reached the college, it was beginning to solidify with all the major results and understanding of methodology of P and NP, efficiency, resources, completeness, many randomness, many central ideas were beginning to gel. And from that point on, I mean, the field was very small and young. And from that point on, I think lots of people understood, how fertile it is. And joined it. People, many mathematicians. Last is a great example. Michael Rabin, many mathematicians joined it, and it started to bloom. Bloom in every possible sense. It got deeper. It understood what it was doing and why it was doing it. It understood the importance of modeling computing systems, but also modeling natural phenomena. I should say, by the way, that this was also understood by the fathers of the field, like both Alan Turing, who sort of invented the algorithm and created the computer revolution, and John von Neumann, who was here at the Institute. They worked on biology and on physics. Really amazing foresight. Anyway, the field, just started diversifying into lots. By today, the theory of computation has lots of different parts, studying parallel algorithms and distributed algorithms and online algorithms and randomized ones and quantum ones and lots of others. So, and of course, cryptography was an important early development because we started studying not just efficiency of algorithms, but properties of algorithms, like the knowledge inside an algorithm, like what we discussed before on zero knowledge. So the goals broadened, and the community broadened, and the phenomenal talent entered and keeps entering. And the connections with, I think, one major thing that happened, that developed in the past 20 years, even though, as I mentioned, started much earlier, is connections with all sciences. I like to say that, there's a famous saying of Edsger Dijkstra, who was one of the pioneers of algorithms in the 60s. He said that computer science is about computers just as much as astrophysics is about telescopes. Computation is everywhere. People used to think, or maybe still think, that it's about the manipulation of bits in computers. But the same type of operations happen between the neurons in our brain and the cells in our tissues, and prices in the market, and friends on Facebook. And I can give an infinite number of examples. Every natural system has processes in which there are interacting parts, many interacting parts in a simple way, creating beautiful things like the body or the solar system, or you name it. And understanding these processes, building scientific theories, in order to do that, you have to understand them also as computing systems. You have to understand their parts, their interactions, their resources, and they may be different than the computer. If you are thinking about neurons in the brain, maybe you need to take into account the heat dissipation, the energy needs, whatever chemicals go in, and so on. But it's computation nonetheless. So the field understood that its knowledge, its expertise in analyzing algorithms and computation is useful to all these sciences. And so fantastic communications and collaboration started with physics and with biology and with economics and social sciences. And it's just the beginning. This revolution is just at its inception. And of course, with mathematics as well, which seems like a static field, it seems like no processes, but one type of theorem that keep being proved in mathematics is some objects exist. some objects with wonderful properties exist. And then the algorithmic question is, really? Well, show me one. And show me one is an algorithmic question. Find objects with desired properties. This kind of question goes even deeper to any field in mathematics, topology, geometry, algebra, and so on. And yeah, lots of collaborations and beautiful results are there, and many more will come.
And none of you is willing to retire, because my understanding is that you both love what you're doing. And Professor Lovas, I know that you have some very recent work you would like to share with us. I'm thinking about large networks and graph limits. Maybe you could explain your most recent work to our non-mathematicians.
So almost every object we would like to understand is really a network. It could be a network of cells, a network of individuals, a network of gadgets, or perhaps just a network of atoms. And so we would like to understand these kind of very large networks, billions and billions of nodes connected in certain ways. And at the last 2 decades, more or less, I was very interested in questions like, but there is this huge network, how to describe it, how to approximate it, how to run algorithms on it. These are all different questions which are related to similar questions in classical computer science or mathematics about algorithms, but the conditions are different. And so one of the underlying ideas of what we have been doing is that if you look at a piece of metal, it is a network of atoms. Usually reasonably regular network of atoms, but it's a network of atoms. But if an engineer thinks about it, they don't think about it as a network of atoms. If they want to see whether the bridge will hold, they will not write up an equation for every possible atom, but they look at some kind of continuous, and I should say approximation. So they think of it as a continuous material, and then you can write up, I don't know how the heat is distributed, how tensions are distributed, what are the deformations. So you can use tools from analysis and differential equations to understand this. And so the idea was what other networks can be approximated in various ways, so that instead the network we consider some kind of limiting object. So that's the idea of graph limit theory, which we have worked on. And in this most recent project, we look at dynamics on the networks, on the big networks. So a network is just like a skeleton of something, and in order to work, there must be several other things happening. For example, on the internet, there is information sent back and forth, or on the social network, on the network of people, diseases are spreading, as well as other things, information and so on. So this is dynamics of networks, and we would like to extend the existing theory of large networks to this dynamical networks.
Thank you for this.
My next something.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that this is just the most recent theory of graph limits that Lazzi and his collaborators have done. It's just the last installment of Lazzi's famous way of connecting different parts of mathematics. He's done it from his youth in solving many problems, bringing tools from outside discrete mathematics to solve these problems. Here, I think that the magic in these continuous approximations of these large networks is that you can simply bring in continuous techniques from mathematics. You can bring analysis in and other tools of continuous mathematics to bring to bear on studying discrete structures. And this is a absolutely major shift in discrete mathematics, and it's being employed not just to study networks, it's employed to study sequences, and it's employed to study groups and many other discrete structures today. And it's an extremely powerful tool.
Many people say that both of you like to mentor young mathematicians, and I'm curious to know, what do you teach them about math and maybe also life in general? What are some of the things that could be done to make it a little bit easier for the next generation of elite mathematicians? Professor Lovas, would you like to go first? I know that at some point you've been part of a group of elite high school students who were taught advanced math. Maybe you could tell us about that experience as well.
Yeah, that was nice, although it was not so much the the material that we were studying. It was much more important that we were together, were inspiring each other. And then, of course, that outstanding mathematicians like Paul Erdős, who was one of the most influential mathematicians of the 20th century, he visited this class and chatted with us, sometimes gave a talk or just gave suggested problems to think about. So that was very inspirational. It was, again, a lucky situation because discrete mathematics was I wouldn't say infancy, but certainly a very, very young science. So you could find problems that were quite accessible. You didn't have to study years and years before you understood what they were about. Now, about teaching other people what to teach them. So certainly the love for mathematics. One other thing I learned from Paul Erdős is an openness, so that you don't try to keep your results to yourself, but you share the ideas with others, and the others will respond to them, and this way you get better results. And also that you should not, especially in an early age, try to broaden your perspective. May I quote something which one of my most successful students said, that he said that thanks to me, he is not an algebraist, he is a mathematician. If you understand what I am saying.
Avi, would you like to add something on this? How do you work with the young mathematicians that you're mentoring? What do you tell them?
First of all, I want to stress that working with young mathematicians, or also students in college, but many graduate students and postdocs, is not only teaching, it's learning. I find myself learning from the young all the time. They are, they come fresh with fresh minds and not preset ideas, and they have, it's just wonderful to be in such an environment all the time. I love teaching. I think that it's very important. Everything that Latsi said, of course, I sign on completely. I think that it's very important for people who start to do research to realize that it's not only technical results that are important and understanding how things were proven, but why. and what was the flow of ideas that somehow brought things together, like what Laureates described with the LLL algorithm, how important it is to know to broaden up when you are young. I once gave a lecture at some conference, and the title was more or less, why should you go to listen to lectures in other areas? I think that there are amazing connections between different areas, and when you are young is the time to be broad, to broaden up. We definitely talk about life a lot with people coming into research find that despite the propaganda, it's not just that you don't have to do you don't have to do anything and you get paid. I think the people who come to this are passionate about what they want to do, and they have to realize, I mean, they do realize, and they have to cope with that, like I told you in the beginning in our private conversation, they often fail. I think that doing research, especially in mathematics, where you don't have a way to validate your, where you stand with measurements of something, you have to love it. I mean, you have to love doing what you're doing, even if you're failing. It's very important to follow your passions, and I think passion and talent go together. I mean, you have to discover what particular, problems you like, what you like to study and what you like to work on. You need to discover that, and then you discover your talents. And I think it's an amazing life. It may not be for everybody, but it's an amazing life to be able to do research and to. I think that passing on knowledge is I wouldn't say as much fun, but almost as much fun as discovering knowledge.
Okay, thank you so much for this. I think we can open the chat for questions. So if anyone has questions, please use our chat. But before we do that, I want to do something interesting since the two of you know each other. I'd like to ask each of you to tell us a secret about the other person, or is there something each of you would like to know about the other person? Avi, would you like to start? Tell us something we don't know about Professor Lovas.
I told you in the beginning that he's extremely gentle and polite, and sometimes it's embarrassing that he always gives way to me in particular and to others. It's Lassie is a kind of a perfect person. It's impossible to find any flaw or any. Well, of course, maybe Kati would tell us if she was listening. We've known each other, I don't know, from the mid-'80s, probably. By the time I entered science, he was already a giant, and it was great to meet the person and become friends with them. Our families became friends, and we've been long-term family friends since then. I wish I could embarrass him, but I
Let's see if the other way around.
I also have difficulty because Avi is such an open personality that he has no secrets. He tells you what he thinks. He tells you what he thinks about. So it's very difficult. Would be difficult to find something that he doesn't tell himself, which is why I love him. But that's the way he is.
This is not how I expected it to be, but I can work with that. Andre at SME Science would like to ask something to both of you. He pointed out that both of you collaborated with a great number of people. How do you comment on the myth of the solitary mathematician or scientist? Is this just a myth?
No,
Avi, would you like to go first?
No, it's not a myth. It's I think that's very important for every mathematician, every scientist, every thinker to find the mode of work that suits them best. It's like discovering your passions and talents. I think that many work fantastically well in solitary, and I think even for both of us, the fact that we collaborate and love collaborating so much doesn't mean that we don't spend lots of time thinking by ourselves. It just, me personally, I find the social element in doing mathematics so dear and so fertile, and that I just enjoy it so much that I just can't think of. If I have any idea, I run and tell it to somebody immediately.
I also think that every mathematician needs the time when sitting alone or walking or whatever the favorite. Some people lie down on the couch, but sort of stay inside your own thoughts, your own head. I could do, for example, when I was young, some of the best ideas came when I was standing on a crowded bus and getting somewhere, and nobody was asking anything from me. On the other hand, I also found that that it's very nice to work with other people, and there are some people with whom it works better, and with some others don't. And one of my favorite collaborators is Lex Schreiber from Amsterdam. And there I know exactly what the point is. I have a kind of geometric view of things, so I imagine things geometrically. And he is extremely good in algebra, so he immediately sees how to do computations. And so we alternate adding new ideas, and that eventually comes out to something quite nice.
Miklos Shimonovic said about you, Professor Lovas, some mathematicians think in pictures while others think in formulas. Lovas applies both method. What is your thinking style? Do you visualize formulas on the ceiling like Beth from The Queen's Gambit, if you've seen the miniseries?
I think for me, the geometric pictures are what dominates. I can do some computation in my head, like formulas, but that's often better done on paper or some more modern tools like Maple. But my basic way of looking at mathematics is trying to build up a mental geometric image of whatever I am doing.
One more question for both of you. If you could go back to the beginning of your careers, would you pick the same area of mathematics? As I'm sure you would be mathematicians again. Avi?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was lucky to land where I am in this area between computer science and mathematics. No, I wouldn't change anything. I think I went to a field that is so fertile and so intellectually, interesting and so important scientifically and practically, and has such fantastic people and to work with, and such fantastic problems to work on, and it just hard to imagine. I mean, I consider myself extremely lucky to have ended where I am.
I agree. I also would not change. Of course, looking back, there might be areas where I said, yeah, I should have studied them a little bit more, or yeah, this was some time spent on reading up on something which eventually had no use for in my own research. But the basic area I would not change. I would stick to the same thing.
Avi, yeah, go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say, I think both of us, it's true for, it's just that you can always imagine other things you could have done, but nobody does with their life everything they could have wanted to do. It's just impossible. So some people, you know, I think regret not doing things that didn't, and other people just enjoy the fact that they've done what they've. And I think we are both like that.
I do have a question about popularizing mathematics and educating the public. Avi, you've been offering your book, Mathematics and Computation, free of charge on your website. The digital version is available there. Why do you do this? And what are some of the best ways to popularize mathematics to the public?
I think that for many, many years, so Latte has written great many books. I learned from his books as a graduate student, and I think expositing knowledge, especially in a very accessible way, is you know, fundamental to progress of science and mathematics. And yeah, I think books like Latte's are prime examples. I, for many years, you know, did what, you know, normal mathematicians do, you know, I teach and give lectures and so on. And then about 10 years ago, I started on this project. I have only one book. This one, but it's really, I'm showing it to you just because I'm proud of the design. My son-in-law helped me create. I offer it free of charge because I want people to read it. I mean, I think that nobody, you know, writes, you know, math books for, you know, becoming billionaires, right? I mean, you want to propagate this knowledge. So I realize that lots of the lectures I've been doing, especially the more popular ones, explaining, you know, my field and the motivations and the ideas and the high-level structure, really more efficient. You know, so something Latty realized in his 20s. I realized quite it would be more efficient if I just put it somewhere so that everybody has access to it. And yeah, so I find it very natural, you know, to put it on my my website, and I hope that many people will look at it. Yeah.
I have always felt it important to popularize mathematics, and I feel that we should have our science presented in a way that is not as frightening and as off-putting as most of the time it is. Actually, computer science is a good area for that, because people do know at least the notion of computer. I mean, if you want to popularize the theory of differentiable symplectic manifolds, then it would be extremely difficult to explain either of the words in the title. So people working in those areas have a more difficult time. I always thought that that if you can explain some elements of your work, but you have to adjust it very, very much to the audience, and some people are good at that, and then they should continue doing it, because it is dangerous for science if people, which I often get from journalists or people who are not in maybe in social sciences, they say, they start the conversation with, I mean, of course, I have always hated mathematics, but I understand that you are so on. So this is not a good start of a conversation, and I would very much hope that it will. I mean, I would very much encourage everybody to try to make sure that mathematics is not hated.
Yeah, let me just one word about it. I completely agree, and I just want to say that I had these conversations numerous times, which start with I hated mathematics as a kid. I think that there's absolutely no reason for that, except that the way kids are educated in math. They are just being frightened and bored by it, and then you cannot fix it. When you are both frightened and bored, at the age of 5, 6, 7, 8, it's very hard to pull you out. Discrete mathematics, puzzles, games, which are never shown to you, when you are a kid in elementary, when you start to be educated, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's the time to start with fun things about mathematics, which are far deeper than just adding or multiplying.
Yes, yeah.
So that's, I think that it's changing a little bit, but it will take, I think, still generations till discrete mathematics makes it to elementary education, big time. And then it will be far less boring, much more interesting, and certainly not frightening. There are always, there's this basic feature that there is not just one correct answer, and otherwise you are wrong. There are many ways to approach a problem. There are better, or you can improve in finding ways, algorithms, as Lati said, to solve a problem, and it's friendlier, it's richer, and it's I hope it gets there.
If you could have any superpower other than mastering mathematics, what would that be?
I don't think I need anything more than I have.
I am satisfied with my situation. I would, of course, like to have maybe more respect for teachers. That would be, I think, very important in many places in the world, or more appreciation of science. But otherwise, I am really content with what I'm doing, what I have achieved.
That's everything anyone could ask for. Cryptography is a powerful tool when it comes to cybersecurity and also the geopolitics of cybersecurity. Do you worry that your math could be used to influence the balance of power in the world? Is there something that doesn't let you sleep at night? Avi?
No. I talked about this in the beginning. I think that knowledge is just an inevitable force of, and the strive for knowledge is an inevitable force of mankind. What people do with knowledge, what governments do with knowledge, it cannot be controlled. people can slaughter each other with bare hands or with knives, and do as much good for medicine or for the opposite with the developments of biology, and I think it is beyond our control. I think that we are maybe lucky to be in the purest side of scientific or pursuit of knowledge. But you are right that some of our discoveries are used. I would like to think that they are used mainly for positive outcomes. Cryptography really enabled, and I should stress, this was a theory before it became cybersecurity. The theory of cryptography asked questions about privacy. And once tools were built in the late 70s, early 80s, these theoretical ideas, I mean, people were playing games like poker over the telephone or useless things like that. Why would you ever want to play poker over the telephone without cards? This was the beginning of modern cryptography. Once this was available, these tools that Latsi explained before with the one-way functions, suddenly people realized there's economic power in that, and electronic commerce was born. And once electronic commerce idea was born, networks, the internet developed because it was possible to make commerce, transfer money, and do all the wonderful things, send emails securely, and so on, many things that we do. So a lot of the world economy today rests on that, right? So lots of good. And of course, remote education, the ability of accessing knowledge. Everybody's part of life is Googling for information that you need. But it's a source like every technology. It's can be potentially dangerous at malicious hands, and one has to combat that. But I think it's maybe if I had the superpower, I would make sure that all people are good intentioned. Just love one another.
I would like to add one thought to this, is that the publication of scientific results, the community, a large community that knows about, everybody knows about everybody else, or most of them, what they are doing, where they are, what are the new results. So this community is some defense against protection, against outsiders coming up with scientific results. The mad scientist who is trying to conquer the world. This is, I don't know if this can be completely excluded, that this happens somewhere, or maybe a mad scientist in some country where we would not want. But if researchers have this mainstream where they interact with each other, they talk with each other, their students visit each other, and so on, that would be more difficult for the mad scientist to compete with, and therefore I think if we try to hold back scientific research, then then we give advantage to this mad scientist. If there is an open community which does research, then the mad scientist has the less chance to do something bad.
That's a wonderful note to end our conversation on doing science openly and collaboratively. Thank you again for being with us today. Congratulations again on the Abel Prize. This conversation was hosted by the World Federation of Science Journalists together with the Norwegian Academy of Science and Letters. Thanks everyone for being here today, and I'll see everyone soon.